Cheyenne, Wyoming sits on the high plains in the southeast corner of this wind-blown state. It was once a hub of activity on the Union Pacific Railroad. In its own way, the Cheyenne Yard still is. The Union Pacific is the only major American railroad that maintains an active steam program. And its steam operations are based here in Cheyenne.
This is like running a dinosaur farm. Nobody else does this. No other railroad does this. Trying to maintain 1940s machines in 1990 and have them operate reliably, find parts for them, make parts for them, whatever, and keep the skills alive is a tremendous challenge.
Unlike a park or museum, the UP Steam Shop is part of a working railroad and not open to the public. Instead, Steve Lee and his crew take the locomotives out to the public on scheduled excursions throughout Union Pacific territory.
It's a lot of fun taking this thing around and making people happy. You don't see very many frowns around this thing. And a lot of people enjoy seeing these. It brings back memories for a lot of people. For most people, it's something they've never seen before or may never see again. But it's a unique machine.
The 4664 Challenger type engine number 3985 is the largest operating steam locomotive in the world. It was recommissioned and restored in 1981, and while number 3985 is currently being rebuilt, it's toured the country as a public relations ambassador, pulling excursion specials and occasionally working freight trains. Challengers were designed in the 30s as dual-service locomotives to pull both passenger and freight trains. Over an 11-year period, 252 were built. The first of them and greatest number went to the Union Pacific, who reportedly named them after the challenging assignments they faced in Utah's Wasatch Mountains.
You had locomotives that were built specifically for hauling passenger trains at high speeds, and you had locomotives that were specifically built for hauling heavy freight trains at slow speeds. The Challengers were designed to fit in between there. They had large boilers, they had high boiler pressure, they had 12 driving wheels, and they were articulated so they could go around sharp curves. So a heavy passenger train that would require maybe 2 or 3 locomotives in mountain territory, one Challenger could handle.
They were so successful that they became the last steam locomotives regularly operated on the Union Pacific right up to 1959. They even outlasted the famous Big Boy locomotive, which the later version of the Challenger was redesigned after. The two locomotive types frequently worked in tandem, pulling heavy trains across the Wasatch into Ogden, Utah.
The two designs are very similar, and the locomotives were designed to work together, to work hand in hand. The original idea was that the 4000, the Big Boy, would handle the train up the heaviest grades, and at the top of the heavy grade, it would surrender the train to the Challenger, and then it would go back and get another heavy train, and the Challenger would take that same train that the 4000 had and carry it across the prairies. That was the initial way they were used, and it worked out very well. They complemented each other.
The UP Steam program's other locomotive is their newly refurbished number 844. And for now, with her sister down for repairs, she's the star of the Union Pacific show. This particular 484 Northern type bears a unique distinction. It's the only steam locomotive on a major railroad that has never been pulled out of active service. The Santa Fe Railroad owned the largest 484s, but no other individual standard gauge locomotive has been working longer than number 844.
The pinnacle of passenger locomotives, in my opinion, is the 484. There were 484s built for freight service, but the ones built for passenger or general service, you generally had a boiler that ran at 300 pounds boiler pressure or thereabouts. You had a very large firebox. You generally had 75 to 80-inch drivers, maybe even a little bit bigger. They were easy on track, easy riding. Nobody knows how fast they'd go. And they pulled big trains. They were easy to maintain, economical to operate. They were a tremendous locomotive. But when the 484 came out, that's pretty much when the evolution of the steam engine stopped. And everybody's energies and research and development started going into diesels. So I can look at a 484 and say that's the state of the art, but we got to remember that the art stopped about the mid-1930s, late 1930s.
Just weeks after undergoing a 2-year-long refurbishing, number 844 was called to some unusual duty in November of 1996. A freight train climbing up Archer Hill outside Cheyenne lost power in one of its 3 locomotives. The train stalled. Number 844 was only minutes behind it on the same track returning from an excursion. Calling in a backup helper diesel for the freight train would have been too time-consuming and would have tied up traffic both east and westbound for hours. Bob Krieger, the engineer that day on number 844, got on the radio and offered his assistance. The train dispatcher knew what was going on, but it wasn't until 844 was pushing him that the engineer of the stalled train realized his modern diesels were being nursed back to the shop by a 1940 steam engine. On that crisp fall day on the Wyoming plains, justice was served on behalf of boilermakers, pipe fitters, and plain old steam lovers the world over.